Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We answered a question. We asked the question the following. Let's say, Mazel Tov, you had a new grandchild, and his name was Yosef. So you go, you say, I'm going to get him a kiddush cup, what a beautiful present from his grandfather, from his Zaidi. So you buy a silver kiddush cup, you go to the guy who engraves, and you say, please engrave the name of my grandson, whose name is Yosef. Joseph. Beautiful. You pick it up 4 days later, and you're like, oh no, the name is Yosef Chaim. You're like, buddy, Mr. Engraving person, I told you Yosef. He's like, oh my goodness, I got confused. It was somebody else. I'm supposed to listen. I won't charge you for anything that I did. I'll give you back your cost. We'll call it a day. Mistakes happen. You're right. Fine. I won't charge you. You won't charge me. Get back my cost. I take the cost. I put it in the back of my china cabinet. Okay, listen, it's still a cost. It could be usable when you have someone come over at some point in time, but you just can't use it for my grandchild. It's a little odd. Unfortunately, a week later, your son calls you and says, listen, Zaidi, Dad, baby Yosef was in the hospital. And the Rav recommended to add a name. We're going to add the name Chaim. The baby lived and was a wonderful, beautiful, healthy baby. You're like, Yosef, Chaim, wait a second. Wow, that's pretty amazing. That cost that I had made a few weeks ago is actually helpful. So you want to now give this cost to your grandchild. The question is, you have to go back to Mr. Engraving person and say, oh, by the way, what you did for me 3 weeks ago, you made a mistake. I don't know. You're like, I'm not so sure what you did. But that exactly is extremely helpful. Are you obligated to go back to them and to pay that person for producing what ended up being the correct cost? This is a great question. I saw this question. I was very excited last night. So there's a Gemara that says, you say you're really mad at your friend Ruvain. You're just really mad at him. And he is a wine salesman. He sells wine. You go into his house, in the basement, you smash his wine barrels, you destroy everything, make it huge, right? You destroy all of his merchandise. A few days later, the government comes because they hear that there's someone illegally making wine from a tax perspective, meaning they're not charging the proper tax numbers. They want to, get this guy good from the government perspective. They go in, they check around, they're like, wait a second, there's no wine here. There's nothing here. The reason why there's no wine or anything here is because you went in and you smashed everything. So the Gemara asks, are you obligated, when you went in and smashed everything, yeah, sure, you're angry and you're mad. But in the end of the day, you saved the owner thousands of dollars worth of fines and embezzlement and jail time, whatever the case may be. You did him a favor. You didn't intend for that, but that's what happened. So the halacha is that when you smash something and destroy it, that's the value that you destroyed and that you're obligated to pay back at that moment. The fact that 2 days later was a benefit to him, that happened to be 2 days later, but at that moment we freeze time, and that's the moment that we evaluate damages. And since at the time there was damages, it was 20 barrels of wine, you have to pay that amount of money. So if that's true, when that Mr. Engraving person wrote and etched in the name Yosef Chaim, he did something which really wasn't very beneficial to the owner of the cost. To have the wrong name, it's nice to have a cost, but you're not giving it to your grandchild with the wrong name, although people do regift things. But that's for another time, right? So the question, therefore, is at the time you made the mistake, that's when we freeze the moment. And therefore, since at that point in time there was a mistake that was made, even though later on it worked out to be okay, you would not be obligated, definitely be Dinei Adam, to compensate the engraver. If he says, listen, Mr. Engraver, you did me a favor in the end, you got to give him something. Nothing wrong with giving him something. Maybe you should do it. Maybe you should recognize it and say something to him. Some karsato, but to be obligated to pay, you would not be obligated, because the halach is we freeze that moment when damage is done or the item is done, and was it beneficial or not beneficial. That's what needs to be analyzed. Therefore, since it was damage done by the wine, you pay. Since there wasn't anything beneficial at the time of engraving, you would be exempt from paying, despite what happened later on. That, I believe, is the correct response to today's Torah Texting Tuesday challenge. Have a wonderful afternoon.